I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street.
You know that 3 o'clock energy lag that everybody feels? Where normally you're reaching for a Coca-Cola or a Starbucks? Well, now you don't have to. Forget everything that you think you know about inhalation and imagine a world where inhaled products are designed for health and wellness. Imagine inhaled products engineered to be free of toxins and instead provide a functional benefit with every breath. Well, that world is now. Introducing electronic caffeine from the good folks at Inhale Health. Inhalation allows caffeine to be absorbed instantaneously, providing faster effects than possible through beverages or pills. Instead of rushing to your favorite soft drink or Starbucks for a dump truck full of calories, now you can just reach into your pocket and pull out your disposable caffeine vape pen. Each 3-second inhalation introduces 16 micrograms of caffeine directly into your bloodstream. So finally, that midday burst of energy you're looking for is just a breath away. Each vape pen comes preloaded with 400 breaths, which is roughly a 1-month supply, and is already charged. You don't need to refill it, you don't need to recharge it. When you're done, simply throw it in the recycle bin and order another one. I love this product so much that I actually reached out to the company and asked them to sponsor my show. And they agreed. So here's what they're going to do. Every one of my listeners who goes to inhalehealth.com and orders any of their 7 different vape pen products is going to get a 10% discount plus free shipping when you put in the promo code FSP as in Fascination Street Podcast. So there it is, guys. That's inhalehealth.com, 10% off any of their 7 products, free shipping. Promo code FSP. So give it a shot. You'll be glad you did. Hi, everybody. This is Steve Owens from Fascination Street Podcast. I really appreciate your listening to the show. I'm having a lot of fun getting to talk to some really fascinating people, and I want to continue doing this, but I need your help. I need you to subscribe and tell people about the show. But the biggest thing you can do to help me is to rate and review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen through. As a special thank you, anyone who rates and or reviews the show, send me a screenshot as proof and I will mail you a set of 3 pair of silk cufflinks courtesy of my friends at Menlo House. You can send it via Twitter to @FascinationSTPD, via Instagram to FascinationStreetPod, or email me at FascinationStreetPod@gmail.com. I really appreciate all of you for listening and for helping. Thank you so much. Now let's get to this week's guest. Hey guys, this episode is broadcast journalist Josh Scheinblum. Josh is a TV newscaster for KCRG in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. In this episode, we talk about how Josh's journalism career basically got started by him winning a YouTube contest. We talk about him working with CBS and Katie Couric, whether Sean Hannity and Rachel Maddow are actually journalists. We also talk about his work on a nationwide Emmy-winning story while he was with CBS. And lastly, we talk about what makes whiskey bourbon. Enjoy, guys. This is Josh Scheinblum from KCRG in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Yeah, talk to me, yeah. Josh Scheinblum, thank you so much for calling in to Fascination Street Podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time. Am I saying your last name correctly?
Yes, you are. Just like, the sun shines and flowers bloom, like a good old Iowa sun.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you for having me.
Oh. Now, you are currently in Iowa, I think Cedar Rapids, right?
Yes, sir. I work at the ABC affiliate in Cedar Rapids.
But you're not originally from Iowa, are you?
Nope. I was born in New England, in Hartford, Connecticut. I guess the short genesis of the news career is I interned for 2 years at CBS in their Washington bureau, and Katie Couric was still there. From there, I went to Cedar Rapids. I worked for the other TV station in town, the CBS station. Met my wife. Been married now 4 years. The family, the whole deal. I was offered a job back out east, back in Hartford, for their ABC affiliate. We were there for just over 3 years, 3.5 years. And then, we really were at a crossroads. What do we want to do next with our life? And, in my humble opinion, we've got a lot of family in Iowa, and there's really no better place to live and raise a family. So we made the climbing the ladder, working a larger and larger market. But I have to tell you, this is the best job I've ever had. I work with a great team.
Sweet. Well, I feel like you summed up everything we were going to talk about. So thanks for stopping by, dude. I appreciate it.
It's good to be here. No, I mean, that's my job, right? You condense complicated issues into a minute and a half. Right? That just means I'm a good reporter.
That's exactly what that means. So you're originally from Hartford, Connecticut, and is that where your family is from?
Yeah, my whole family's from Connecticut. Much like they have been visiting Iowa several times. And they kind of got the bug too, and now they live here, like my big fat Greek wedding style. We've got the whole family, both sides of the family, now live in Iowa, and I think I'm responsible. Basically, if you're in Iowa and you meet a Scheinblum, there's a very, very, very good chance that they are direct relation to me.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. I mean, even and this is, I don't know of any other TV station where this is the case, but my younger brother recently graduated college a couple years ago. He was looking for something to do, but the whole family, my parents, everybody had already relocated back to Iowa, and he was freelancing for our TV station for a little while. And basically, he was just doing it for so long, he eventually got a job. I'm not sure if anybody could really tell you when that actually began, but he works in a bureau in Dubuque, Iowa, and I'm in the main hub in Cedar Rapids. So we are a TV station with two brothers on air at the same TV station. And one time I was filling in, anchoring the morning show, and I actually got to toss to my brother. And that was, without a doubt, one of the coolest things, if not the coolest thing to happen in my career. I don't know if anyone else has been able to do that, but the stars aligned just right in so many ways, you could say.
That sounds really cool. I don't think I've ever... Well, no, I guess I did work with my brother at a restaurant, not for very long.
Aaron and I, we used to work on a farm back in the day when we were living back east in high school. And I don't think Aaron really cut it out on the farm, too. Picking tobacco it's tough work. But I'll tell you what, though, when it comes to television, I mean, we both have the bug. We both love journalism. We love facts and what comes with it. And when you get the chance to work together, it makes it all the better. And I'm just so blessed that I have a boss who, he looked past the last name, gave my brother a shot, and he's been kicking butt and taking names.
Nice. What do you think sparked the interest in journalism for both of you guys?
It's a great question. For me, I'll be the first to say I was always a weird little kid. I didn't have much interest in watching cartoons. I used to just sit in front of the TV and watch local news. And this was before, where they were completely digital, where they would essentially read the same scripts half hour after half hour on the morning show. And I would sit there and I would watch the whole broadcast in every replay. Not your typical little kid. And my dad, who is not a journalist, he works in finance, but it was a family ritual. We would get pizza on Sunday nights, and then we would watch 60 Minutes, if not doing both at the same time. And I always wanted to work in television, or specifically news, but I mean, how do you do that? Even when I went to college, I mean, I was pre-law. I was studying political science. It just kind of happened. There was a YouTube contest. I guess it was probably around the time, YouTube was still pretty new. But it was make a video. The contest was make a video about why you would be a good intern at CBS News. And, you see these promotion things happen all the time. Now it's probably on your mobile cell phone device or whatever. But I guess I got really, really lucky. I'm sure that video is circling somewhere on the internet and is embarrassing. But, I had a radio show at the time. My mom really pushed me to do it. Make this video, you'd be great. And I was like, I'm not going to get it. But I won the contest. And then they invited me to come back the next summer, too. That put everything in motion, sharing an office space where, you've got Lara Logan on 60 Minutes on one side and Bob Schieffer was down the hall. I mean, for me, it was the coolest thing ever. These people I'd watched growing up as a little kid and idolizing, I was now crunching the data and doing the research. I mean, how do you not get the bug?
Yeah, I guess so. Do you know how many people also entered that contest?
No idea. I very well could have been the only one. I don't know.
I
But
think
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it was 47 million. So good job, man.
Yeah. I'm not sure what your source is, but I'll tell you what. I'll take it.
My source prefers to remain anonymous, so
Okay.
it's a confidential informant, if you will.
Perfect. Those are good ones.
So this is going to sound really weird, but recently I interviewed sort of an up and coming actor. He's been in a bunch of movies and TV shows, but this is his second career, and his first career was as a photojournalist for news channels. And
Wow.
his name is Scott Takeda, and he used to actually work on screen and off screen in Iowa in some city I can't pronounce. But he also, as a child, used to just sit and watch the news instead of cartoons. So maybe that is more common than you think.
Yes, I'm okay with that. My son, who's going to be 2 in August, I don't know if he necessarily has the news genes, but he loves to watch public television. He only speaks a few words, but he will sit there and he'll watch the documentaries, he'll watch the kids programs that are, targeted for kids much older than him. I don't know if you're a father, Steve, but like it's amazing when you have kids when you start to see little pieces of yourself in them. And I think that, to your point, if there are some more kids like that, I mean, it's just awesome. It really, really is.
It really is kind of cool. And I do have kids. They're 25 and 26. But even now, I'm still seeing things that are new to them, but are little pieces of me. So that phenomenon that you're enjoying is not going to end anytime soon.
Yeah, it's the best, and that's the best job of all. My wife had bought me a bunch of books, and maybe I shouldn't have her listen to this part of the podcast. But before we had our son, she bought us a bunch of books, and I've just always been somebody who learns by doing, and I've hardly done everything right. I'm learning as I go, but being a dad is the best job anyone could ever have. If you were to put it, on paper, that you're going to be woken up several times throughout the night, there's going to be days where you are covered in every bodily fluid you could imagine. I'm not sure anybody would sign up if you wrote it on paper. But it's those subtleties, it's the love you get, it's when you have a bad day at work and your kid's smile makes it all go away. I mean, it's a job where I don't know if you can necessarily read something and then truly get it. You have to live it. And once you've lived it, everyone says when you have a kid, your life is never going to be the same. But that description just doesn't give it justice. It's not going to be the same in the best possible way.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think more men should do it. I think more men should hang around and be a father for sure. But talking about putting it on paper and it might not, you wouldn't sign up for it. Oof. Think about the mother part of that. Oh, Lord.
Yep.
And that's as detailed as we're going to get right there.
Yep. No, I don't mean to mince that. I mean, you're going to see some things, man. I don't want to. I mean, that's the thing is no matter what you're seeing, it's worth it in the end.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say. But no, there are going to be some trying times. There's going to be times where you just changed a diaper, only to then change a diaper 2 minutes later, and it's all over their clothes, and they're running around the house, and the dog is licking them, and it's just the worst thing that you could ever imagine. Nothing sanitary about it. You're going to have to wash down the whole house. But it's still worth it. That's how good being a dad is. Where you can put up with all of that stuff and still smile at the end of the day. If you were to go to work and do that, I don't know if you'd walk out with the same outcome.
There's times when you're changing a diaper and you reach over to grab the new diaper and it's already too late.
Yep. Or even better, I mean, I've got a son, you're changing and they're peeing on you.
Yes.
On your clothes. And it's one of those situations where you had just gotten ready for work. So, in my case, I wear a tie to work. You're never going to get that stain out of that tie. Tie's gone. Your white shirt's ruined. And now you got to get changed. You got to change the kid. And by the way, you got to be at work in 10 minutes. Oh, and drop them off at school.
Yep. I lost a good pizza that way.
Yeah. I believe it.
So what took you to Gettysburg College?
Great question. When I was in high school, I thought that I was going to be the great college football player, and maybe that's how I would get into TV journalism. I don't know. Anyways, I think like most kids when they're 18, they don't necessarily have all the direction in the world, and mine at the time was, football. I was obsessed. And I ended up going to a school where I'm not sure it was the best fit for me, but I went there because I really wanted to play football at this school. Long story short, ended up dropping out. I had a friend who went to Gettysburg, and at that point I was just so disillusioned with college. My parents and my grandparents, they all but begged me, please go back to any school. If you don't like it, you can drop out again. And I had a friend who went to Gettysburg, longtime friend since I was a kid, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go to Gettysburg. I'm just going to go have fun. I'll play football there too, but I'm not, I'm going to give this another semester and then I'm going to leave and do something else. But it turns out like I really liked it. The people there were super nice. The faculty members were inspiring. I know it sounds cliche, but everybody reminisces about their alma mater as if it was the greatest thing ever. But for me, if it wasn't Gettysburg, I'm not sure I would have graduated college. For me, it was the perfect fit. I wish I could tell you that there was some program that I was like really interested in doing when I went there, but it was just because I had a friend who went there. And, it seems to be a continuing theme in my life where, the stars seem to align just right and everything works out. I think it's a God thing, but, even when you're at your lowest point, dropping out of college, anyone's ever done that, it's not a decision you probably made lightly. You worked really hard to get into college, and then to, throw it away or to walk away, that's not an easy choice to make, no matter what your circumstances are. Then to get back into it, so that's a courageous step for anyone who's ever done that, whatever your reason is. And I hope that, people have an experience like I did, where whatever the reason is you're going for, I hope you find that passion and that you're able to finish. And even when I was there, I was studying political science, but I'm a journalist now. And if it wasn't for going to Gettysburg, I wouldn't have seen that flyer for that YouTube contest on a random chalkboard. Or better yet, my mother wouldn't have seen it when she came to visit campus. She wouldn't have pushed me to make a YouTube video. I wouldn't have gotten the job to work in D.C. From there, I wouldn't have moved out to Iowa, wouldn't have met my wife, and we wouldn't be here right now. In that sense, dropping out of college that first time around was the best decision I ever made in my life.
Wow, that sounds like a series of fortuitous events.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if you're someone like me, I'm not a big believer in coincidences, and I can't say that was necessarily the case when I was 18 years old, but now that I'm an old man, there's just too many things that have lined up, and in the end of the day, things have really worked out in the best possible way.
Wow, that's awesome, man. Good on you.
Thank you.
So from Gettysburg, is that when you went to the CBS Evening News with your internship?
So it was my last 2 years of college that I did that. It was my junior year and my senior year. I was spending my summers down in D.C. working there, and they were really just some of the coolest people I've ever worked with. The people that I still keep in touch with now. And I can't speak for every journalist and every organization, but I couldn't tell you what many of these people's politics were. I may have had an inclination, but man, they worked so hard to... I was in the investigative unit there too, I should preface. Maybe it's different elsewhere. But when I was there, everything was about filing records requests, digging through pages and pages of documents, finding 5 words of something that you didn't know about that brought something else to light, cultivating sources to bring new information. It just seemed like too much work to be political. Seeing how ethical they were in their approach, it's given me a guide for how I want to, conduct myself, no matter how things may change, no matter what organization that I'm working for.
I'm glad you brought that up. Would you say, because that was a few years ago, right?
When I was at CBS?
Yes, sir.
It was 2000. I'm gonna get my dates wrong, but I think it was 2009, 2010.
Okay, so that was 8 years ago or so. Would you say that, because you specifically mentioned the non-political aspect of those folks that you worked with, would you say that has changed? Maybe not there, but overall?
I have to tell you, Steve, you'd be a great journalist because you ask really great questions, and they're direct.
Thank
And
you.
I like that.
Oh, and also feel free to not answer anything that you don't want to answer.
You know what? This is what I think. If somebody asks a loaded question, I call them on it. You didn't ask a loaded question. It's a fair question. And when I do an interview with somebody and I ask them a direct question, I expect them to answer. I think that you've been totally fair, and I think that you deserve a fair response. And and if I don't answer it satisfactorily, then you call me on it, and you hold me accountable. But what I think is there is no question that we are living in a time right now where it seems that the type of news outlets that people are consuming are the types that not necessarily challenging their own opinions, but are ones that might echo opinions that they already have. I have a routine that I follow every single morning. I read 2 news sources. I read Drudge Report and I read the Huffington Post. Both outlets break news, often days or weeks before everyone else. Those are also 2 very different ends of the ideological spectrum. If you want to know what's going on, you have to, and you truly want the facts to inform your opinion and not look for facts to validate your opinion, you're going to have to move outside of your comfort zone. And you're going to have to either look at analysis, look at opinions, even look at news stories covering subjects that you may not particularly like. There's a debate we're having that's going on right now. You see what's going on in your neck of the woods on the border.
I do.
I don't know of anyone who couldn't be moved by the images that we're seeing. The question is, though, is this something that's only taken place under one administration? And that's something where I think many outlets have failed to discuss when it comes to this issue. Is it so simple that it's about one president and one policy? Or is this something that goes back to legislative measures in the 1990s? Now, I'm a journalist. Like you, I get to ask these questions. But if those questions aren't being asked, then it seems like those are areas where media outlets can fall short. And when media outlets are falling short, that's when people indicate that there is a perceived bias. It's our job to find the facts and ask the right questions. And if every effort isn't being made to do so, or, heck, we're all human beings, we all make mistakes, but we have to keep on it and make sure that all of that information is getting out there.
I think that the key word in what you said was integrity, like investigative integrity or reporting integrity or whatever, however, journalistic integrity, however you want to phrase it. But I think that might be the least important of the journalistic pillars that are being followed right now on both for every station that I can see. My personal opinion, keeping in mind that I'm born and raised in Texas, so that might sway me one way or the other, but I feel like there's really only 2 major, sides of the story. So there's the CNN or the NPR, and then there's the Fox. And I feel like both of them are telling stories that specifically their audience wants to hear, and they're painting things in a light that their audiences agree with or feel comfortable hearing. I call them pitchfork programming because it's really just, hey, we're just echoing whatever you think, so, grab your pitchfork and follow us or whatever. I think it's really divisive, and I think it's getting worse, and it's really bothering me.
Well, Steve, I think that there was an article I had read yesterday, and I wish I could remember where it was from, but there was a recent poll that came out that upwards of 70% or so of Americans can't identify the difference between opinion and fact in a news story. When you watch the Fox Newses, when you watch the MSNBCs, when you watch the CNNs, there are many people who say that Rachel Maddow is a journalist. Rachel Maddow is not a journalist. She is entitled to her opinion, and she can say whatever she wants, if that's allowed under the First Amendment, but Rachel Maddow is not a journalist. On the other side, Sean Hannity is not a journalist. He is a political commentator. And you may love Sean, you may hate Sean, and just like Rachel Maddow, he is entitled to say what he wants under the First Amendment, but he's not a journalist. And so often when I see critiques of these 24-hour news network stations, those are the first things that they bring up. How dare they allow these reporters to go on and say these things, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. And the first distinction I think has to be made is these are not journalists. These are commentators. And if you watch Sean Hannity, I'd implore you to watch Rachel Maddow, and vice versa. Challenge your perception of what's going on. And if it only reinvigorates, I guess, your current opinion, more power to you. But we are in a very polarized country right now, and we're not listening to each other. And there are a lot of things that need to be disseminated and understood. And whether you love Rachel or you hate Sean, they are breaking news some days. And that's worth knowing what's going on if you want to be at the forefront. The other thing that I think is worth noting, too, is there are journalists that, I don't care if you're at CNN or wherever, there are real journalists who are working very hard at these stations, and they're doing a bang-up job. You know, one of the easiest targets that people seem, and it's low-picking fruit, frankly, from where I'm standing, that people attack, is Fox News. When Major Garrett, who's currently the chief White House correspondent for the CBS Evening News, when he was at Fox News, people either don't remember or forget this, that he was blocked access to the Obama administration because of the network that he worked for. Because the perception was, or what they had said, is they were not covering things accurately. It was a news agenda-driven organization. Now he works at CBS News, and no one's making that same claim. Major Garrett, he does a podcast, and he had recently said in an interview, his ethics didn't change. His style of journalism didn't change. He's the same reporter that he was despite whatever mic flag might have been there. There are really great journalists at Fox News, you know, from Brett Baer and the whole team that he has working for him. I mean, heck, you know, even Sean Hannity was like, how much of a hard time am I giving the news department? There is a good news department at Fox News. CNN, there's been some questionable things on that program. I mean, you have a main anchor, Anderson Cooper, along with Don Lemon on New Year's, who are drinking and joking and laughing as one of their correspondents in the field watches people take bong rips in a limousine. Now, whether or not, you know, whatever you might think about that issue, can you imagine if Walter Cronkite walked in the room and saw that? He'd roll over. But that doesn't mean that when Will Ripley's in North Korea, that he's not doing great work, which he is. And when the news consumer is forced to watch on the same network all of this stuff going on, it's of course more than 70% of Americans are confused or can't tell the difference between opinion and fact based on how it's presented because it's presented under the same mic flag. The thing is, though, we need to be aware when we watch these sources. This is why we need to watch multiple sources so we can be as informed as possible. And frankly, you know, watch your local news too. You know, we don't make a lot of money. We're in this because we love this. It's as raw as it gets for journalism. I mean, you know, you might see a fancy promo on TV, but there's not a lot of glamour being a local reporter. You know, we do this because we love this. If the only motivating factor you have to get into local journalism is because you are politically motivated, well, there's a whole other bunch of lines of work that you could do that pay a heck of a lot better and have much better hours.
I'm sure. You said 70% of Americans are confused, and I was going to ask whose fault is that? Is it the audience or is it the stations? And I think you answered that, so thanks. I appreciate that.
No problem. You know, and I would say that by one point of clarification, I am not surprised that people are confused, and that's the good part about being a reporter. I've done my best to lay the facts out there. You get to make up your own mind.
There you go.
And I want you to make up your own mind.
I think you were pretty clear that, you know, it's no wonder everybody's confused. Do you think that, because you mentioned a couple, like you mentioned Rachel and Sean, but in my mind, you know, you said that, you know, maybe they're not journalists, which I agree with, but I feel like they're in the same category as, you know, like Stephen Colbert or Bill Maher. I mean, I feel like they're kind of doing the same thing. It's just, you know, some of them are doing it to get a laugh, and the other ones are doing it to get a drama, if you will.
Well, I mean, Steve, as to what is in their heart, that's why I love being an investigative journalist, because what I deal with is very concrete. It is what we can find in black and white, unequivocal proof. If we report on it, it's the truth, and we're not magicians. You can do the same thing that we did and arrive at the same conclusion. It's a little harder to show your work. We're talking about the personal motivations of people. I don't know what's in Mr. Hannity's heart or what's in Rachel Maddow's heart or Bill Maher or anyone like that. You know, as a journalist, I take everybody on face value. When it comes to the comedians you mentioned, is it a shtick? It very well could be. I mean, you know, they're performers. With political commentators, I don't know. But I could tell you that if I was ever asked to do a profile piece on any political commentator, I would take what they say at face value, and I would talk about what it is that they've said, what it is that they've done. And perhaps that's a good question that you asked too for them. You know, is what you're doing a shtick. I guess then it's their choice to either tell the truth, not tell the truth, and for the audience to decide what they believe. Hashtag journalism.
Hashtag journalism. So let's talk about, you worked on an Emmy-winning series, back when you were in Washington. I believe it was called Rape in America, Justice Denied.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do on that? Were you investigating? Were you reporting? Were you doing both?
So things at the network, a little bit different than in local news. Like, here in Iowa, I am doing my own research. When I'm writing my own scripts, basically doing everything from top to bottom, and sometimes you get the help of a photographer or a producer. The network setting, it's a different structure. You've got you've got some people who are doing research. That's where I fell in. You have producers investigative producers who are essentially reporters, but they don't go on TV. They'll even conduct interviews that are on camera. You just won't see them in it. And then you have the correspondent themselves. And my correspondent was Armin Katayan, who is still at CBS, I think, and he does HBO Real Sports. And basically, Armin would come, he would do the interviews. He was involved in the whole process, but he's basically like the boss of the unit. He would ask questions, and he would sit there when they would do those two-camera shoots, and you just can't replicate that. There's so much nuance that's involved in a one-on-one interview that you just can never explicate in, shall we say, in print. That's really where the correspondent shows why they're the shining star, so to speak. And Armin he's among the most professional, smartest journalists I've ever worked with. But what I did on that story was I was calling police departments all over the country. I had a big Excel spreadsheet, and I would ask them how many untested rape kits that they had in their police departments. And when we had done this story, this was one of the pieces that helped, move forward what was called the Debbie Smith Act to remove this rape kit backlog that we had in our country. But it's one of the more high-profile pieces I've ever worked on, but it's a story that I'm basically still doing today. As an investigative reporter in Iowa, we found thousands of untested rape kits sitting on police shelves in police departments all over the state of Iowa. Now, almost 8 years later, it's still an ongoing issue, but it was something that we were able to bring to light. And it's one of those, I guess, to bring things full circle, to talk about what the politics of the situation. It's a nonpartisan issue. Republicans get sexually assaulted, Democrats get sexually assaulted, the politically apathetic get sexually assaulted. And for every sexual assault kit that is sitting on a police department shelf, some of which have been sitting on there for decades, is a victim who likely didn't get justice.
Why are they sitting there? What do you attribute that to? You did all the investigating. Why are they untested?
So there's a lot of answers why. And depending on the department you ask, the agency that you ask, there's a lot of reasons. One thing is just, the sheer volume in which DNA crime labs are burdened with testing. They don't only have a lot of rape kits to test, but they have to do anything that has to do with forensics. They're testing DNA on it. If there's a burglary that police are investigating and they swab a doorknob, that has to be tested. And depends on the agency, but might be moved into the same thing, and that creates a backlog, just the sheer volume of things that they have to go through. Here in Iowa, you can submit a rape kit anonymously. And while the police department may be required to keep it, they're not necessarily required for it to be used in an investigation if the victim doesn't want it to be. There's lots of reasons. The issue that many advocates have raised is you need to test every single kit, because what we've seen happen from DNA testing is it has exonerated people who have been in jail for crimes that they didn't commit, exonerated because those rape kits were tested and they found out the DNA didn't match. There's also issues, from what I've heard from police, where there's no question that there were two people that had relations. The question, is it consensual or not? So they would make the case you don't necessarily need to test the kit because we already know that these two people have said that they had relations, whether illegal or not. And I'll say this, I think our stories that we did at CBS are still online, and the story that I did here in Iowa is still online, and we laid out, I think I only gave you 3 bullet points, but we had a lot more of what police say those reasons are if people are interested.
Oh, I'm sure there's a bunch of reasons or excuses. Well, here's what I think needs to happen. Howard Schultz recently stepped down from Starbucks and said he's just going to be a CEO emeritus or something. We need to put that guy in charge of it because he managed to put a Starbucks on every street corner in the world. So it sounds like we need more testing facilities. Get after it, Howard.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, again, as a reporter, I just get to kind of stand here on the sidelines and ask questions. But, you could make the case, I think, by that same token, and I think many people did make the case, if not most people that you saw on TV, that a reality television star and real estate developer would in no way be the president of the United States. And here we are. You can't rule anyone out.
Clearly. That is a lot to think about. So I feel like if there was money to be made in testing these kits, they would all have been tested already.
Well, I totally forgot about this. It's also really expensive to test these kits too. Again, it varies by agency, but it's thousands of dollars.
Yeah. And where does that money come from?
Taxpayers.
Yeah. So
there are grants that are out there, through things like the Debbie Smith Act, which were, federal money, but it's still coming from the same coffers. I mean, that's how they get tested. Like any crime. I mean, if the police investigate your crime, it's taxpayer money that's behind the investigation. Same thing with a sexual assault.
Well, that makes sense. If only there was a Kickstarter to help pay for testing of kits.
Well, there was a story we did here in Iowa. This is maybe just jaded old me talking now, but there's many times that you do a story as an investigative reporter, you bring something to light, whether it's fraud, waste, abuse, misuse, whatever it might be, and it would appear on the surface that nothing happens afterwards. When we did our rape kit backlog story in Iowa, we did a follow-up a year later, and the Attorney General's office in this state launched a website for people who wanted to check or re-engage in the status of their rape kit investigation. If you look at this website that they made, it's pretty remarkable what they've been able to do in just a year's time. The different parties that they have been able to work with. It was the state of Kentucky who really inspired the state of Iowa to basically follow their lead, and they took a lot of their ideas for the website that they had launched. And they had a couple more ideas on their own, and they added that. And who knows, maybe another state will be inspired now seeing what Iowa has done, and they'll take their idea and move the ball down the road. But the implication seems to be clear, at least from both of those two states, is that a rape kit backlog is unacceptable, and it needs to be cleared. And if we need to re-engage folks, here's how we can do it. There are so many agencies involved with a process like this, and what both websites do in both states is essentially, and I don't mean to be trite, but it's one-stop shopping, showing the links to different advocates, different organizations that can help, as well as a means to re-engage in the process. And at least here in Iowa, what their goal is to add to their website is for there to be a mechanism where people can find out the status of their rape kit. And that's remarkable. But, like how we started this, I started working on that story in 2009. It's 2018.
Right. Well, I don't think, other than bourbon, I don't think you hear the phrase, inspired by the good work of the state of Kentucky, very often. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And I let the record show I'm a big fan of Kentucky bourbon when I'm not at work. But we even did an interview with them, on-camera interview with what the folks were doing in Kentucky, and they're very proud of what they've been able to do, and they've got the data to show it.
That's awesome. Well, Josh, I feel like I've taken up enough of your time. You have been a truly fascinating and engaging interview. I really appreciate that.
Oh, you're too nice. You're too nice, and you've been a most gracious host.
Thank you. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media, Josh.
Sure. Well, I try to stay active. My Twitter is just @JoshShiney, SHINEY. The same goes for Facebook. And if you want to send me an email, it's just firstname.lastname @kcrg.com.
Awesome. Do you have a website or anything like that of your own?
Just Facebook, Twitter, just the social medias.
Okay. Cool. Well, Josh, dude, I really, really appreciate it. This has been eye-opening and, like I said, very engaging. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
No, thank you, and you keep up the good work. Really, really enjoy everything that you've been doing. I mean, when I found you on Twitter, I started listening, and, it's not easy to create an interesting show for just under an hour, and you do it. So thank you for what you're doing, Steve.
Oh, Josh, you're going to make me cry, man.
And that's okay. It's okay to feel things, That's part of the news, too.
All right, cool. 2 more questions, and I'll let you go.
Sure.
What's your favorite bourbon?
Oh, man.
See, it's the hard-hitting questions.
Well, so it's not technically bourbon, but there is a whiskey done right down the road from where I live here in Iowa, Cedar Ridge, and it is absolutely fantastic. There's another one in here in Iowa called Templeton Rye. I love that too. I've got the affinity for the local Iowa stuff. And it's right here, I mean, we grow corn, and corn makes whiskey.
So what makes your Cedar Ridge not bourbon?
I like the sweets, and I've gone for the tour, the distillery tour, and, if you've been to one, the process looks very similar, but maybe it's something in the barrels, I don't know, but it's just got these, delicious vanilla notes, and I love it. I like anything, drink responsibly. But on Father's Day, if you're barbecuing some ribs and you have a nice glass of Cedar Ridge whiskey, that's a win right there. That's how you spend that Father's Day.
So how come it's not bourbon?
Doesn't have to be from Kentucky?
Oh, I was really hoping.
Like a thing that Kentuckians are protective of, kind of like champagne has to be from the Champagne region of France?
I was really hoping that was going to be your answer. That is a common misnomer.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I'm glad I walked into that one.
Yeah.
Here, let me get my foot out of my mouth.
All right, cool. I'll wait. So let's just take Jack Daniels, for instance. Jack Daniels is made in Tennessee, and so people think that's why it's not a bourbon. But the reason it's not a bourbon is because after it is distilled, it's charcoal filtered. The U.S. bourbon law of 18 whatever or 17 whatever says that after it's distilled, nothing can touch it when it goes into the barrel.
I did not know that.
So the definition is a certain percentage of, corn and a certain percentage of some sort of a wheat. And, it has to be in oak or whatever. But the main thing that makes most whiskeys not bourbons is that something is done to it after it's distilled. And that's what makes it not. So your Cedar Ridge, it could be bourbon.
You know what? I guess you're right. I guess it could be. I don't know. Now you've given me something else to investigate, but it's in the best possible way because no matter what the outcome is, I get to drink whiskey, so that's a win.
That is a win.
That's the best possible story.
Yeah. And so the last thing, I know I said it was another question, but it's really just a declarative statement. Happy anniversary. I believe your anniversary was right around a month ago.
Thank you very, very, very much. I might not be a millionaire, but I wake up every day certainly feeling like it. I've got the best wife in the world who puts up with me. I've got a wonderful son, and we've got another child on the way. We're literally living our dream. Is life rainbows and unicorns? Not always, but this is the happiest I've ever been in my life, and I can't thank you enough for the kind words. Sincerely.
Absolutely. Mazel tov on the new kid.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Josh, I'm going to let you go. Thank you again so much. I appreciate your time, and you have a great rest of your week. And thank your boss for letting you do this.
Oh, don't worry about it. Thank you so much.
Have a great day, Josh.
You too. Thanks, Steve.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Barstar Podcast, hosted by Stephen O'Reilly, is a podcast about working musicians, their friends, and their opinions. Stephen is a musician in Louisville, Kentucky, who has... Wait a second. This guy's a drummer, not a real musician? Somebody gave a drummer a microphone for his voice? The hell? Unreal. Unbelievable. The Barstar Podcast is a show that aims for something a little different. It's hosted by a drummer who thinks he's a musician. But let's be honest. I know and you know that drummers are not musicians, right? Or are they? Hang on a second. Who wrote this crap? This is garbage. Nobody's going to listen to a show put on by somebody they haven't heard of. Stupid.
Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Myers Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.